Atlanta Farms Depredation Hunt, Chief of Game Larry Gilbertson. The department shall provide the history and background of events leading up to the current management strategies for handling elk depredation at the Atlanta Farms.
For the record, Larry Gilbertson, Department of Wildlife. Mr. Chairman, in order to cover that history, I brought Mike Scott up from Lincoln County. He's been a biologist down there for about 12 years now. And by going through the history of the Atlanta Farm, we should cover a lot of the landowner program that we have for handling depredation problems. So I think it'll be good to get a lot of information. Yeah, I'll put it up on the projector here shortly.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Mike Scott. I'm the biologist in Lincoln County. We're going to go over the issues at Atlanta Farms. I've been dealing with this since 2000, but we're going to go from 2002. I'll give you a little history from there. Atlanta Farms, which is formerly Holt Farms, depredation chronology. This place is located approximately 30 miles north of Pioche. It's east of Pony Springs in Lake Valley. There's 34 pivots, approximately 44,310 acres of alfalfa, potatoes, onions, corn, etc. Depends on different years. They have different crops out there. The majority of this land was transferred as a desert land entry in 1994. And at that time, the Department of Wildlife made comments about anticipating that we would have depredation issues out there. Since that time, there's been 2 owners or leasees that have been on that property. Here's a picture of from Google Earth of the property. You can see it's out in the valley. The majority of the problems tend to come in the south end. You can, the darker colors there are pinyon juniper trees around that south end. There are some issues that further north, but the main portion of the depredation problems come in the south. It's a pretty vast area when you get out there. It's really open. What's happening? The elk damage has pretty much remained constant over time. Damage primarily occurs at night, not necessarily during the legal hunting hours. The elk come from those surrounding areas of trees into the fields, and when they get some pressure on them, they still come into the fields at night, but they leave earlier in the morning before it gets light. So it's not like you can easily solve this problem with hunting, but we've definitely tried. Damage includes the alfalfa that's eaten by the elk, potatoes that have been destroyed by elk walking through the fields, elk wallows that damage the crops as well as the equipment. When they drive their tractors through there, they've had broken axles and different things like that. During the rut, you get a lot of bulls that tend to be fighting and stuff. They damage fencing, sprinklers, equipment, everything. Picture of just a group of bulls right outside the fence at Atlanta Farms. You can see how thick the trees are, just a mile or so from the fields. We've used a number of different alternatives to try to solve this problem over at least the last 12 years. We've tried hazing to minimize elk use of the property, and we did. It says no may increase damage to associated private property. Mr. Harker asked us to stop hazing elk several years ago, because it was causing more damage to the fences than if we just left them We installed jumpers around a lot of that area in the south end. I'll show you a picture of those. It allows the elk to access the property, but it minimizes damage to fences. We have paid damage payments for both the loss of crop, it's a formula based on the amount of elk use, and we've paid actual payments for damage to actual private property. We discussed fencing this for when I first started dealing with this. We talked to it was Kerry Holt that owned the property at that time. We talked about fencing it, but it 26 miles of fence, and this is a recent estimate of the amount per mile that it would cost to do that. $416,000. It's a couple of years ago we were actually paying about $20,000 per mile. So you can see that it's really cost prohibitive to try to fence this whole chunk of property. We've tried hunts to remove or harass elk, and we do have the option of removing them ourselves. We have never tried that. The different hunt alternatives that we've talked about or that we've had include antlerless hunts, antlered hunts. We could have a spike hunt. We proposed a management bull hunt, and we could have an either sex hunt. We did do, for a couple of years, we did application depredation hunts. Issues there, we have to set, the timing is set for 2 years with other big game seasons. We need to guess on the timing of when there's actually going to be the highest number of elk there, and the acuity of the elk problem as well in advance. We also have to set the number of tags, and then the tags will be issued to hunt applicants. We also can have held emergency depredation hunts. These are these allow us a little more flexibility. The timing is set just prior to the hunt on an as-needed basis, based on current conditions. The number of tags we can set to whatever we think is needed, and then the tags are issued to unsuccessful applicants in the any legal weapon antler hunt draw. I'll just give you a brief history of what we've done over the past 10 years. 2002, we investigated elk damage on 7 occasions from August 14th to October 7th. We ended up paying $7,092 for elk damage to whole farms. We held 2 emergency elk depredation hunts with a total of 19 tags, and tag holders removed 11 antlered cell. In 2003, we employed 4 seasonal elk hazers to harass elk out of the fields at Holt Farms every night. Mr. Holt did not submit a damage claim that year. However, 2002 was a very dry year, and there wasn't a lot of feed, so the Lincoln County Elk Technical Review Team requested an emergency antlerless elk depredation hunt in all of Unit 231. This was not just related to Holt Farms. With a quota of 30 animals, and hunt dates were January 18th to February 2nd, 2003, and there was a total of 7 elk farms. In 2004, Joseph Parker became the leasee, and is still the current leasee of Atlanta Farms. One seasonal elk hazer and myself spent approximately 40 nights hazing elk out of the fields. Despite the harassment, the elk numbers continued to increase until the beginning of the elk archery seasons. Elk hazing ceased before the archery elk season began. We decided that it was not in the best interest of the hunters with archery tags to continue hazing the elk out of the property at that time. The hunting pressure did not appear to reduce the elk use of the property during the late summer or early fall, and we ended up paying Mr. Harper $21,000 for elk damage that year. He did have one entire pivot that was not harvested due to the heavy use by him. 2005, we employed seasonal elk hazers again, who spent approximately 50 nights harassing elk out of the fields at Atlanta Farms. We paid Mr. Harper $8,375 for elk damage that year. 2006, Endow seasonal elk hazers spent 41 nights hazing elk out of the Atlanta Farms. We held 2 emergency depredation hunts with 10 tags for hunt. We had a total of 4 antlerless elk harvested. In October 2006, we purchased fencing material and paid the Nevada Division of Forestry a total of $3,503 to fix fence out there. That fall, we received a bill for $56,650 for elk damage from Mr. Harvest. We went to the elk damage arbitration panel. It was the first time that was ever enacted in Nevada, and I had offered Mr. Harper, I think about $7,500. He wanted $56,000. The arbitration panel awarded him $10,000. This was an example of what the elk were doing in the potatoes. This is a wallow that they had dug up potatoes, pawed the ground. There was a little bit of water that was there, so that was probably what attracted them. But just walking across those fields of potatoes, they would kill the top part of the plant, which would make the potato itself quit growing. This is just one little example of fence damage. This was there was probably 8 or 10 miles of this type of damage around the farm. You can just see where the elk used that to cross. You can see on the very right side, they've broken the fence there. This is pretty widespread around that southern extent of the property. This is an example of an elk jumper that we installed. We have 5 of these installed around that south end. What it does is it allows elk to jump over that in between those poles there, and they don't damage the barbed wire fence, but it still allows, it allows elk access to the property, but it keeps horses and cows out still. In 2007, Mr. Harper requested that we stop hazing elk because it was causing increased damage to the fences. That was the first year we held an application depredation hunt. We had 8 bull tags and 8 tag holders harvested 6 bulls. We also had an antlerless hunt, 41 antlerless tag holders harvested 12 antlers. We received a bill for $42,000 for elk damage. We offered Mr. Harper $7,302 for elk damage, which he accepted. In 2008, we also held an application depredation hunt. 8 bull tag holders harvested 6 bulls, 40 antlerless tag holders harvested 10 antlerless elk. We paid Mr. Harper just under $10,000 for elk damage that year. It's kind of got to the point at this time where Mr. Harper feels there's a lot more damage, but he doesn't want to go to the arbitration panel. So we're kind of negotiating with him on the damage at this point. And 2009, very similar. Application depredation hunt, 10 tag holders harvested 8 bulls, 40 cow hunters harvested 10 cows. We paid Mr. Harper just under $10,000 in damage. 2010, pretty much the same thing. 8 bull tag holders harvested 5 bulls, 40 cow tag holders harvested 7 cows. We paid him just under $10,000 in damage. After the 2010 season, I ended up having a lot of conversations with the Lincoln County Game Board about this hunt. The long depredation bull season, it was 2 months long. It was allowing hunters to pass on non-trophy bulls, awaiting the big one to come in. The hunt was regarded as a trophy hunt, which was not helping to solve the depredation problem. This allowed bulls to continue using the fields, resulting in increased damage. What was happening is the tag holders were watching these young bulls coming in and out of the fields every day. As they got closer to the rut, middle of September, late September, you'd get a great big elk coming in, pushing cows in, whatever, and then they'd shoot that bull. And so you end up getting a bull that probably hasn't been in the fields at all summer until that point. And all these other elk that were using the fields are still running around. Tag holders were generally hunters. With the application depredation hunt, what you were getting was tag holders who were hunters that had already harvested a Nevada bull and were in their waiting period. Okay, a lot of them would call me, ask me how, where the elk coming in the fields, how to hunt this place. And a lot of them would say, well, I'm not going to shoot one unless it's bigger than the one I already have. I heard that over and over and over. Got tired of hearing that. They're not solving the problem. The other issue was hunting during September was allowed for this rut type hunt. Not popular with the county game board. They didn't want to have that type of hunt, especially in that area. Also, we had a pretty large hunt area. It was 5 miles from the existing fence lines. This was allowing people to take bulls that may or may not have been even using the fields. The objective of moving depredating animals away from the agricultural fields was not entirely successful. Elk damage and damage payments continue to be high. The leasee feels the damage is higher than we're even able to pay. We tried to enact a management bull hunt for this particular hunt. It would have been a 5-point or less, and that was not accepted, so larger bulls can still be harvested in the depredation. 2011, we had several discussions with the Lincoln County Wildlife Advisory Board with regard to the Atlanta Farms depredation hunts. We wanted to get rid of the rut hunt during September. The objective was to try to get hunters to remove or harass the elk that were using the fields, especially the younger and smaller bulls. We held an application depredation hunt for antlerless elk. 4 16-day hunts, 10 tags per hunt were recommended. The results aren't yet known. We also decided to hold 3 emergency depredation hunts for bulls. They were 3 5-day hunts, 5 tags per hunt. I've heard of at least 3 bulls harvested. I know of 4-point, 5-point, and a 6-point, but the final results are not yet known. The thing about this emergency depredation hunt is it's not about opportunity. It's about trying to solve the problem. And I've heard a lot of complaints that we've done something underhanded here, something like this, but a lot of the people that have been complaining would not likely not shoot a 4-point bull. This is a bull that was taken this year by a young kid from Pioche, and just extremely happy. I also have a couple of pictures of some large bulls that are examples of what people have been taking if you guys want to see them. But essentially I'm done with this, and I'll take any questions.
Show us a Mondo bull.
Show the big elk.
There's one that was shot right next to the highway. There's one that was shot right outside the fields. And here's the one this year that was shot up on Grassy Mountain that got a lot of attention.
So obviously the 5-mile radius will still,
Yeah.
Except you tightened it up a little bit, Mike. Mike tightened the 5-mile radius up a little bit, brought it from the headquarters, and what that did is eliminated some of the springs on the perimeter where people were setting up and waiting at the springs during the rut for a rutting bull to come into the spring. And those springs were actually sites that archery hunters could hunt. So Mike did tighten it up and pulled it in from some of those springs, but it's still pretty big.
Yeah, it's 5 miles from the headquarters of the farm. So it goes a couple of miles outside the fence lines.
Commissioner McClinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mostly just to talk to Mike and see him for a while. How close are we to having a landowner tell us to come get elk?
Well, I don't think we're very close. They're putting up with the damage. They're okay if we can pay them that amount of damage. There's a lot of issues here that aren't really mentioned. We talked about putting in a fence, close to $500,000 to put a fence in. The water for this farm is owned by, I'm not sure, it used to be Harvey Whitmore. So this water was planned to go through a pipeline and go south. I didn't ever feel like we should spend that money on the fence, because if that water goes away, the problem goes away. And then we have a $500,000 fence sitting out there for nothing.
it still seems to be, I mean, I remember a lot of these from being around when we first go around, and you know, hearing about it now, a little distant, I'd be a little challenged. I guess things are still tolerable, I guess, huh? Things are still working. I guess that's what I'm asking. Is there something that needs to be done, Dave?
You know, if we can, we've tried to allow these hunters to remove these alpha harassing out of the fields. The problem is that if you have a group of hunters that thinks they're going to shoot a 400-inch bull, and all they're seeing is little 4 points, 5 points, they don't. That's been my problem for the last 4 or 5 years. Is that these hunters have this trophy mindset, and that's what I wanted to get rid of. And that's why we went to the emergency depredation hunt, because you go from taking somebody who's already killed a Nevada bull to somebody who's never had a tag. They're not going to lose their bonus points, and we felt that they might be more acceptable to shooting a smaller, younger bull.
That's come with a little baggage, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You hit on one of the major bone contentions from what went on this year was you have hunters that put in for depredation pay. They were unsuccessful. He went to the general rifle. Now the hunter that killed this great big bull is still eligible to apply next year with 100% of the bonus points he had.
Right.
That didn't sit well with a lot of people, and that's what I'm getting a lot of gripe about.
Well, then ask that person that's already killed a big bull in Nevada if it's fair for him to shoot that one too. So, you know, I mean,
No,
you got to make a decision on what you're going to do. I tried to enact the management bull hunt for this hunter, 5 point or less. That bull would never have been harvested. So that's where I'm coming from. It's frustrating to deal with this, Jack, honestly.
No, I understand what you're saying, Mike. I'm just telling you what, and there's been a bunch of emails going back and forth on this topic just the past couple of days. I'm sure you've seen it.
Absolutely. And I understand. I mean, I'd love to shoot a great big bull too, but you know, I'm not too concerned with the size of the bulls as solving the problem.
Commissioner Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, just a statement and a question, follow up. Maybe I'll start with a question. Why is there such a low success rate on the cows? Is it mostly the bulls that are, causing a lot of the problems?
Well, I guess people come up and think that the cow hunt is going to be a real easy hunt. They may just not be able or willing to work that hard for just meat, whereas there's people that will take 2 weeks off or longer to hunt bulls. So I think it's just a timing thing. A lot of people aren't able to hunt during the week, and so there's a lot of people out on the weekends, and once one shot or one vehicle comes through there, those elk are back in the trees, and it's tough.
Well, I know it's a frustrating issue. I appreciate your time and effort trying to solve it, and especially working closely with the cap down there. That means a lot. If there's something the commission can look at to try and help resolve that, please don't hesitate and ask.
It's been brought up before about maybe doing some opinion juniper removal in that area. Would that be effective? Would it help? Would it be effective in not getting elk that close that they can get there, and would it also help in being able to hit that elk before it hits the tree?
We talked about this a few times, and I would love to do it, but now you're talking public land, and you got to get BLM involved and NEPA and everything. But I'm willing to try anything. I mean, you can build a moat around that place easier than stop it up and something.
Commissioner Howell.
How many elk we talking about this total? More or less.
Total that use the fields?
Yeah.
Probably the most I've seen is about 30 or so cows, and I've seen one group of close to 30 bulls. So 60, roughly.
67.
Yeah.
If we were to give him landowner tags, how many do you think he might qualify for?
Well, he doesn't qualify because it's alfalfa, so we can't offer him tags because that's not part of that program. We can offer him, you know, all the other things, the hazing, the hunts, the money to pay for damage, but we can't give him tags.
Thanks.
How much damage what was the largest number of bulls you killed in a year? 8? I think that was.
Yeah, probably.
How much damage do 8 bulls cause?
Well, in 2 months, they can cause an awful lot of damage. Actually, in 4 months, because they start coming in late May or early June, and then before we even start hunting them, it's into August. So, you know, they're there, and then if you don't have anybody that wants to remove them, then you allow another month and a half or so. So it could be a significant amount of damage. Yeah. Plus, when the rut starts, then they herd their cows again as well.
Okay, well, any action item coming out of this, Rob?
Informational now.
I mean, future.
I'm sure it's going to be addressed tag allocation.
Okay. That's all very good.
It might not change, but it will be discussed.
Any other questions for the commission on this one? Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Lake Mead Hatchery update. Chief of Fisheries, Mark Warren, brief update.